One of my great frustrations on YouTube has been the large number of people that think there is a surgical line, a fissure that can be drawn between intellect and emotion, that they can be separated, but they can't. Certainly if you're going to describe an automobile engine, the intellectual part of your mind is very efficient at that. But in truth, the intellectual parts of our mind evolved after and on top of emotion. And intellect does not work properly without emotion. Pure intellect is possible, but we don't have it. And we can't have it any time in the near future unless we completely reorganize our brains. And this is something that Antonio Damasio has shown, a neuroscientist. I recommend the book Descartes' Error for this. But this comes up in unreasonable expectations. Sure, that automobile engine works great, but what if you want to describe the human experience? Can you do that in pure intellect? Can you do that with pure emotion? No. You have to use both, and the two intertwine like a vine growing on a tree. It's a complex interaction. And the reason you have to do it that way is that's the way our minds work. If you had some alien species, well then, maybe they evolved differently. But we don't have a choice in this. And it's not a matter of philosophy, it's a matter of neuroscience. This, of course, is Descartes' error. The idea that there can be pure reason. And this is something that Gene Roddenberry understood very well in Star Trek. After all, the Vulcans were not logical. Not at all. If you look at Vulcans, they used their emotions first, and then they justified, rationalized their decisions. If you look at Spock and his father's interaction, it's an interaction between a father-son. It's part of a mythological tale, except they deny the emotional part and come up with rational explanations for how things work. Now, another place this frustrates me is in my job. I'm teaching pre-medical students to prepare for the medical college admissions test, the MCAT. And a big part of my work this summer and over the years has been related to a section called verbal reasoning. Now, this is reading a 600-word passage and then answering about 6 questions about the passage. And most people do very well about passage about natural science, about the solar system, and maybe about paleontology. But when mythology comes up, when various aspects of human experience come up, things in the arts, where the authors of these passages are no longer talking literally, but metaphorically and symbolically, why, they just break down. They don't get it. They're used to reading science texts where things are clear and precise. And the way to explain to them what's going on is not to explain it to them rationally, if possible. The way to do it is to read the passage with emotion, because they don't understand the context of the words. I say, what does this mean in this context? There's a particular word, and they come up with a correct meaning for the word, but it's wrong in the context it's written. So you read it with particular flavorings of emotion to give them an idea. Now, if you explain to them logically, well, this word is used in this context because this and this and this, they go, was I supposed to know that? But if you just read the sentence with subtle accents, they'll say, I get it. That's because we're using both the emotional end and the intellectual end together, intertwined, like a vine. And if you look at poetry, if you look at literature and arts, any of the arts, you'll see the same thing. You'll see this interaction. Now, this gets me to something, because when you create something that's art, not the description of an automobile engine and how it works, the way to do it is to get to a certain place in your heart, in your soul, It's a modality of consciousness. And when you can get to that place, you don't have to think. It pours out of you. It comes out of you. It comes out of the emotional end. It interacts with the intellectual end. And if it's done right, it's something that isn't personal, it's universal. It's something we all can share because it resonates with us, within us, because we all share the same collective unconscious. We all share the same neurophysiology. Sure, we have individual differences, but we are so amazingly alike that we can see what is great art. Now, one of the absolutely greatest videos I've ever seen on YouTube was made by Ziggiecrow. Now, I did not edit his work. I just took it and I said, okay, let's start here and let's end here. And I just put it on my channel. I notified him of this. And to me, it is astounding because he's coming from a place, an emotional place, and yet it's intertwining with all these symbols and ideas. And I thought, you know, I would love to just kind of explain this, but that would destroy it. Because the truth is, if you take a work of art and you explain it, you degrade it, you debase it, you remove from it its essence. Because its essence is that resonance that you get. It is the experience of that thing. It is the interaction of all these different emotional and intellectual elements, the symbolism, the metaphors, the clever ideas that come together that create it. And I thought about it. I said, gosh, you know, I would love to do that. I would love to break it down and say, look at what's going on here. Because it's what it does is it explains, it expresses, it conveys a state of consciousness. And do you know how frickin' hard that is to do? And it does. God, if you're able to listen, then it's an amazing thing. I mean, it really, really touched me. I was so impressed. I know he'd thought about these things before. But the way they were conveyed touched me. Now, there's something else that, I mean, the reason I actually made this video is because because of the Big Sister series. And there's a part in it that reminds me of the broken mirrors that Ziggy talked about. I spoke with Big Sister a year ago, and I said, what are you doing? What you up to? And she told me something like very different from what I was thinking. She said, well, I like to go to forgotten graveyards where all the headstones are covered with dirt and leaves. And I'm about to tell this next part incorrectly. She does not kick away the dirt and leaves with her foot. She got down on her hands and knees and pushed away all the debris with her hands because she was performing a sacred act. And I read the name aloud, and I look at the dates, and I create for them a life. I imagine where they were born and how they grew up and who they knew and what they did. And occasionally I will go to another grave and do the same and imagine that those two people met in their lives. And I think about that interaction. She went on. And I cannot convey it the way she did. But to me, that was another broken mirror moment. And I cannot explain it further.